Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Thought Leaders. I'm your host, Chris Shang. Today we have Annie Tsai, who's the CEO of Interact. Thank you so much for joining us, Annie.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now, a company that you're at, and who makes a good customer for you guys.
Sure. So, Interact is an online marketing software SaaS company that makes quiz software. We focus on small and medium-sized businesses that are leveraging their online presence to generate leads, engage their audience, sell more stuff faster. I've been there for about 4 years now. My entire career has kind of been in growing fast growing companies, scaling them out, taking them to exit, and then moving on to the next sort of big passion project. And so I've been working on this for a little while, and it's been such a great experience working with small businesses.
Yeah, how big is the team right now?
So we are bootstrapped. We're on our 10th year, and we have 13. When I joined 4 years ago, I was the fifth employee.
Got it. And a curious question, but like, do you expect even as you scale to scale the top line, do you expect the team to still be fairly lean? Is that kind of the nature of it
Yeah,
now?
I one of the sort of strategies that I've been able to implement at Interact and I've been really passionate about for a long time is what I call smart growth. In sort of SaaS 2.0 venture-backed companies, and I invest in companies on the side, right? And so I'm very, very familiar with that space. SaaS companies allowed their CAC to just explode because money was cheap. And when money became uncheap, it was a bunch of heartburn. Um, and so from a smart growth perspective, because I always had a customer experience and an operational strategy lens, I really wanted to here make sure that our productivity per employee always remained really high. Even last year when we, increased our headcount by, 15%, we still were in the top 25% for productivity per employee. So I'm really pleased with those numbers.
Very cool. Yeah, I want to dive into this because I feel like this idea of like growth and growing businesses, specifically, I think more so towards the philosophy that you have, which is like smart growth, is very prudent right now.
Mhm.
But it's centered again, you alluded to this already, but your experience through customer experience and talk us through what that origination like. I've already spoken to maybe a couple of experts this past week that are from the employee experience side, customer experience side, but how all these things interrelate with one another for overall trajectory of like scalable growth for a business. Even the way to discover which levers to pull on either of those departments are all very similar. But talk us through kind of how you entered into customer experience. I don't know if that's something that you always felt like you were compelled to do or stumbled into it somehow, but what was that story like?
Yeah, my whole career I describe it as playing a game of Candyland. People people ask me how I ended up in this role, how I ended up being able to work on these cool projects over time. And um, there was no, I think, defined plan in the beginning. My first job in tech was as a sales engineer, which still remains today my favorite job of all time because it really enables you to make sure that you can put on your sort of, customer hat, your sales hat, your positioning hat, and your technical hat at the same time. And you really have to be really thoughtful about who's in front of you and how you're talking about the goals and what buy-in needs to look like and how to move forward. And so I learned a lot in that role, and coming out of that, my mentors or champions really, I think, saw an ability for me to be able to look at all these various components, and complex decisions and processes that were happening and figure out how to scale them out. And so my role coming out of being a sales engineer was rolling out operational strategies across 26 markets globally, that were customer experience oriented. People who bought products, were being onboarded, and from the day they purchased up until the day that they ended up leaving us, what were the things that we as a company could optimize or improve on by local geography in service to being able to expand that relationship over time. So that's how that pivot happened. I ended up moving into marketing strategy because that was the next step. Okay, we've done post-sale, and let's talk about what pre-sale looks like in the top of funnel and how we take what we learn and create a flywheel out of that, which was really fun. And then from that point, customer success started taking off. And this was probably, I don't know, 2010, 2011
Mhm.
by that time. And I was chief customer officer at a company called Demandforce. And I joined at 8 million ARR. At that time, we were probably in the 30 or 40 million ARR point. And we started thinking about how customer success is really, it's a mix of people and product. And so, companies at that time, it was the kind of the beginning of SaaS 2.0, right? Companies at that time were spending a lot of money on the people part and not the process and technology and product part because it was cheaper.
Mhm.
Um, and so we started doing a lot of tests around scale, primarily because our focused audience was small business, and you'll really kind of blow your cogs if your ACV is below what, like $5,000-6,000, and you have a huge customer success organization. So through all of these experiences, it really gave me, I think, such an interesting lens on how the different levers within a company can be pulled, how you can design an organization across multiple functions to not be really siloed. And it's been really fun implementing those learnings in every company since then.
Very cool. You also mentioned that you make investments as well and into different companies. I'm curious. I mean, I play that game too. I think it's a different lens that I had to organically grow into, I think, to become comfortable in.
Mm,
And I think looking at it, I almost feel like you're able to look at businesses under a microscope that's a little bit different, right? If you understand how go-to-market works. And
yeah.
I don't know if that's something you think about as part of how you evaluate. Obviously, I think I think it all kind of correlates to one another too. It's not like I'm just going to invest in these types of things, but like it's almost something where you're noticing something that from a go-to-market, something's clicking there, and you're like, oh, there's something happening here that I need to get deeper into, and then finding like that gold nugget, in there or diamond in the rough to then be like, oh, I should get involved in this somehow, shape, or form. But then similarly, like, how do you use those kinds of experiences to identify when you're actually working within an organization or with an organization, like how to leverage that insight and visibility also?
I think a couple of things have been really helpful. One is I spent a lot of time with a few executive coaches learning about what works for me in terms of how I learn over time, and how I sort of approach challenging situations, and how I can help my team really be as high performing as possible in any scenario, make the best decisions possible. Um, and through that evolution, I think I was able to kind of step into conversations with more of like a listening hat on. And I think, as an investor, a lot of startup founders will come to you because they've seen you do things in the past, and they think that, okay, well, you've got the plan, let's apply the sticker to the project and then it's done, right? But that's not how it works. Every
No.
company is so different, and my job, I think, is to help the founder think through what the potential risks are, and to help them come to a place as quickly as possible, because we got to move fast, right? Help them come to a place where they feel comfortable about what those next few steps are going to look like, and how they're going to think about success, how they're going to think about killing the project, how they're going to think about a pivot. Um, and the other thing that I think I've become comfortable with over time, probably over the last decade, is, this question of like, I don't know, was it Zuckerberg who called it fail fast? And, build fast and break things or whatever, but um, people get really, really invested in that first idea. But you've invested in companies like 8 out of 10 times. What ends up sticking is not what you start out with. And you really have to like unstick people from that and get them comfortable with the idea that maybe 5% of what you start with is going to be in that finished product. And what you ship initially to customers, you're not going to be proud of. So those are kind of the things that I think I work really well with founders on. And then the other area is like helping them sort of see at scale where some of these decisions may come back to bite you. Some of these like shortcuts that a lot of founders take in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, as you're talking about that, I mean, there's faces and names that pop into my head of like companies that or portcos that I've worked with that are like that, right? Where I think like you see a lot of technical founders get under this like perfectionism syndrome, and then they
Mhm.
are very slow to ship anything just because they keep on making excuses. And I think it's probably rooted in fear psychologically of like, what if it doesn't work? What if the market doesn't receive it in a certain way? And so they just keep obsessing over that idea of what perfect means, which obviously you don't never necessarily even get there. But that being said, we just did another one of these with somebody who studies like neurological leadership, and I think it was super interesting because I think when you start talking to senior leadership or anybody kind of in a leadership position, the skill set shifts, right? So it's like you have to have the hard skills, which is whatever got you to be an expert in that said field. But then you also have to have the soft skills to transition into a leadership role, or at least become an effective leader, right? And I think that's something I'm curious as to like, what are your thoughts on that? How do you come in and then, I think like it's one thing to know what the series of levers are that you're trying to pull within an organization, or even just assessing, you can kind of make that a binary assessment, but then to instigate change, that's like the gray zone. That's like what every company's so different. I think like the chemistry of every organization is going to be different based on the different individuals, the combinations of individuals within the organization. So how do you work around that? Because I think that's like half the battle.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was thinking about sort of what creates like high impact leadership, it's the idea and the vision is a very small percentage of it. What really, really matters is how well you can inspire your team and how effectively you can execute and manage change.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can come with mediocre ideas that are executed really, really well and have better outcomes than a great idea that's poorly executed, right? And so um, the the most important thing I think for leaders is making sure that the construction of the team has the skill sets, both soft and hard, to deliver on this execution component. And if you don't, then that's like your number one job. As a CEO's job, never run out of money, right? To have the vision to inspire the folks. My job is to make sure that from a workforce planning and design perspective, we are looking, okay, over the next 3 to 5 year horizon, these are the skills that we're going to need to have within our organization. Where are we lacking? How can we support training up? How can we help people get there? And where do we need to bring in from the outside? The other thing that I think is more immediate is, things that are in front of us, that we always hire for. Like we spend a lot of time talking about values and culture, like probably probably more than I think most really small companies do. But one of the things that we always hire for, and we spend a lot of time hiring for, is whether or not there's sort of this like ego complex.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we going to be willing uh, to be wrong about something? Are we going to be willing to, take a back seat on the team on this project because, there is someone else that can take the lead on it? Are we going to be willing to, be the person to take customer service calls because we need to survey our audience and validate some research? And so, everyone that we hire for like very much pitches in across all functions. And I think that those types of sort of cultural components are really, really important to being able to execute and drive change.
I agree. Um, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit here, but talk about the topic of AI, right? I
Mhm.
think like there's ways to leverage it to bake into product that I believe can deliver a better customer experience or more customer value. And then there's the other part of it where a lot of our organizations are talking about how it can, how it could potentially replace human hires to a certain degree. And I know just speaking with uh, some of the players that are behind the scenes and kind of building the foundation of AI, I mean, like they are imagining a world where you have like a completely vertically integrated company centered around AI or built on AI with a handful of employees and building $1 billion, type of business. And that's, and it's not impossible, but I'm curious as to like, um, from an actual execution or implementation standpoint of that kind of technology, how do you look at it? When you're bringing up just the size of the team, how long it's been around, I almost felt like, oh, can you leverage, are you guys leveraging AI as part of the product, as part of, what certain team members are using in order for them to, represent or the bandwidth of what maybe historically was like 2 to 3 hires, but baked
Yeah.
into one now using AI, right? So curious as to how you see that.
Yeah, we do utilize AI across the business,
Yep.
internally and externally. In 2023, mid 2023, we launched an AI quiz making product that today represents 40% of our signups
Well,
um, publicly. So it's quite impactful on the external side because it's the value of having someone be having the AI product be able to create the product for them, the end user product versus having them manually do it, sort of like designing a website versus using a template, right?
yep.
It's the ROI is tremendous for them, and so it's been really successful on the internal side in terms of operations. We use AI all over the place,
Mhm.
where we use it for data validation. We use it for on the testing side. We use it to optimize services. And so there are components internally all over the place where we're using AI. However, where we don't use AI is we don't use it to like talk to customers really. We have a chat bot during off hours because we have a global customer base, but we don't use AI to converse with customers.
Mm.
That's all people.
And do you think that's something that that's part of the mission vision of what the company represents, or do you think that the technology is not there yet, or is that something, curious as to if there's any underlying direction in terms of what you guys are thinking internally on that front?
Yeah, so I think for for most things, artificial intelligence can probably get you to 50%.
Mhm.
And then after that, I don't think that that any of the technologies are there to take you all the way.
Yeah.
So you're always going to need to escalate to a human, right? Now, my personal philosophy is if 100% of the time a customer chats in and they're using an AI bot and only 50 and they have to be escalated at some point.
Yeah.
Where, so a chatbot's taking care of 70% of the top 10 questions, through links and resolutions and all that kind of stuff. And that's just decision tree, simple ML, right? But um, the really complex stuff frequently requires a conversation. And while we've had well over 1 billion, quiz impressions on our for our product in our company history. So we have a ton of data,
Yeah.
but we find that, a person can speak to someone empathetically via chat. We don't even get on the phone with them via chat,
Mhm.
understand what they're doing, and get their problem resolved faster than an AI or a Gen AI and conversation bot can do it. Um, Even if we turned on something like a Fin from Intercom or whatever, it would cost more and take longer for our customers at this point. So maybe one day it'll get there. I don't know. I but we haven't seen an increase in customer service cases,
Mhm.
an absolute increase in 3 years, even though our customer base has tripled, because we focused our resources on improving the product experience, on the UI, on the AI product that solves for customer adoption and that ROI fix. And a lot of embedded self-help in our product. And so we've productized customer service and customer success. And then the people that chat in for help, they actually need real help.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, staying on that topic similarly, but switching departments to the growth side of things.
Mhm.
Do you how much do you guys leverage AI for that versus and I guess like as you're thinking about growth now, right? I mean, just overall, it doesn't have to be AI specific or related, but how has that evolved in the company? You know, you've been with this company now for 4 years, and I feel like a lot's been changing. So I'm sure from day one when you came in, there was maybe a set of expectations, and I'm sure it's probably changed quite drastically in terms of how you're going to, or what those expectations are, what the goals and or milestones were, and how you're trying to accomplish those goals and milestones probably has evolved quite a bit too. You
Mhm.
want to share, could you share anything around what that might have looked like from when you came in 4 years ago to today?
Yeah, it's really interesting because this is the first company that I'm working at where we don't have an outbound sales team.
Mm-hmm.
So we leverage content marketing like HubSpot and Ahrefs and all of the sort of influencer content channels, but we've been doing that for like 10 years. So we have hundreds of thousands of backlinks and um our web content is really rich across all these channels. And so we use AI for keyword research. We use it for competitive research. We do some sort of automation around identifying ICPs for our partner channel. So we have a pretty robust affiliate and partner program, and we have one person running it, and then we have one person on content and brand, and you know we we don't use automation to create the content, but we use it to understand what we should be doing.
Makes sense. Um, Interesting. And so that coming in now without an outbound sales team and having historically seen that,
Hmm.
is that do you think that that kind of positions where this company is right now for that smart growth trajectory? And do you think that the general, because the overarching landscape that I'm seeing is like it's similar, right? There's a lot of companies that did have historically still have outbound channels and have outbound sales teams, but they're being asked to do number one, they're being asked to do a lot more with a lot less. They are revising quotas. It's definitely coming down. Sales cycles are elongating. ACV is coming down. Conversion rates are going lower. Budgets are getting tighter. More decision makers, including CFOs, even on small deals that are 4 or 5 figures kind of thing. And so, yeah, there is a shift to, I feel like this product-led growth side of things. I don't think it's become very clear in terms of how companies are prioritizing between PLG and outbound and how that works together. Do you have any thoughts around that, just kind of given your background and then how this company has been so efficient?
Yeah, I think there's sort of like a line to draw in the sand when it comes to whether or not you will be forced to be PLG versus sales or MLG, right? And that is predicated on what your average contract value is going to be.
Got it.
Whether or not the business can support an expensive go-to-market. Um, and I would say if you're in the six-figure ACV range with multi-year contracts, enterprise deals that have seat-based expansion, yeah, you can have a robust outbound sales team with field people going out there, being on site at big shows with giant booths, giving away a ton of stuff. I mean, you can do that, right? But if you're in the low to mid five figures, it's very hard to do that well, because what ends up happening is you really you end up in this cycle where your LTV is not going to be big enough to support customer success and account management, and your expansion is not going to be big enough. And so your net ARR, if you're in the 90s or the 80s, like it's really going to mess with the company, with the metrics with the company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Where I see this happening too a lot is like vertical SaaS companies where, uh, they're selling into like mid-market or SME, and the contract values are like just shy of six figures, and
Mhm.
they still have really expensive teams. And yeah, and I don't know when you're selling into like that kind of space, and maybe you have thoughts on this, but how do you how do you veer away uh from like outbound and focus more on PLG if the unit economics is telling you to do so when that market isn't necessarily like super technically savvy?
Yeah, I think that there are a couple things that you can do. So you can verticalize in a couple of ways. You can verticalize by industry. I think a lot of people or a lot of companies have also successfully verticalized by target audience. And so, at the enterprise level, you can't really run with a pure play PLG product because there's going to be so much customization involved. And so you need to have higher ACVs with longer contracts that make it much harder to sort of rip and replace, right? And that's going to have a team with, your quarterback and the traditional sort of account management model. But I think where a little bit of the art is in your sales operations folks really doing the work of understanding where do I draw the line in the sand where this account model doesn't work anymore. It won't create sort of a functional business model. And wherever that line is, whether it's 100K or 50K or 75, you have to do that. And then what the next step to that, and we've had to do this at a couple of companies, is figuring out, okay, what is an acceptable by customer standards servicing and adoption model that involves some scale, maybe a lot of scale, but some scale, and understanding what that investment is internally, in order to create that world. Someone has to design it, someone has to roll it out. Change management's going to be really important. And then there's a question of, okay, well, now that we have this model that we're going to do, how do we get our customers to that endpoint? And so a lot of change and adoption there as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of great insights. Um, I know we're rounding up on time, but
Mhm.
uh, one last question here is just kind of for you personally, right? I mean, you have a wealth of knowledge. I think you can obviously be working in quite a few different arenas or different companies, and or just doing your own thing, right? Where do you see your, where do your interests lie in the sense of where you want to be over the next few years? Like, is Interact kind of like on that trajectory of being there, really kind of taking it to the next level, and as you mentioned, to an exit of some sort, and then finding the next thing? Or is there any point in time where you're like, you know what, I've had enough rounds of this. I would like to focus on whatever XYZ
Yeah.
might.
That's a great question, Chris. I don't know the answer to that question. I think I'm really enjoying the team. I think the most important thing for my happiness is working with people and customers that I enjoy being around. And I really love these people. We're not family, but we are family, and we treat each other like such. And I love it. That being said, well, we don't know what's going to happen, and we'll take it to whatever endpoint we can. We'll grow it as much as we can. We have pretty lofty goals over the next couple of years, and I think everyone is excited to really challenge ourselves to do those things. Coming out of COVID, I think a lot of businesses, really kind of we're treading water in the ocean, trying to figure out what the hell they were going to do next, right?
Yeah,
And so, we're excited about the goals that we have ahead of us, to see where that's going to take us. Uh, but to the question of like what I'm going to do when I grow up, I don't know, man. That's a hard question to ask.
fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. Well, I want to say thank you so much for spending the time with us and just sharing your unique insights and visibility in terms of your area of expertise. It was very, at least for me, it was very enlightening.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you.